Kia ora and welcome back to Whakarongo, the podcast representing the voices of thousands of rangatahi in state care. My name is Sydney Ann, and after marching to Parliament last year calling on the government to uphold 6 promises relating to our basic rights, this year we're talking to the young people affected by those promises being broken. The 4th is a promise made to Aaliyah Davies.
You promised to provide me with education.
Aaliyah moved through more schools than any child should, and as a result missed out on the crucial milestones and resources she needed to flourish in the classroom. Kia ora, Aaliyah. Firstly, thank you so much for opening up and sharing your story with us. I wanted to start off by asking about what your experience was like in care.
I grew up in a domestic violence household, moved around home to home. My parents were substance abusing, and I came into the care at about the age of 10.
Before you went into care, you were moving around a lot. Did you move schools a lot before you went into care as well?
Yes, but definitely not as much as when I came into care.
Okay. So, and then when you went into care, how, for your whole education journey, how many times would you say you moved schools?
14 schools.
Oh, okay. But a significant amount of that was in care.
In foster care, yes.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, the impacts then on your education as a whole. Do you think you learned everything you needed to learn?
Because I wasn't having consistent schooling, I never actually absorbed anything.
Yeah.
So that was probably since year 4, that I just, from year 4 to year 11, I didn't absorb anything.
Yeah. Because you're moving heaps.
Because you're in that constant state of fight, flight.
Yeah.
At home and in school, you just can't process that.
Yeah.
So when I was 15, I went for an assessment, which I was told was to help just see where I'm at, mentally and just learning education-wise. And so I went and did that assessment, and it was over the course of 2 days, very long sessions, very draining. And at that point, I wasn't in a great mind. I wasn't safe. I wasn't happy. I was exhausted from being in a constant state of fight flight. So I went and did that with all that stuff going on where I was living. And so that was 2 days of just, doing exercises. And it came to the conclusion that I'm intellectually disabled.
I laugh, not because it's actually funny, but it's my response to something that's so outrageously untrue.
Because I went and I've spoken to multiple people since, because that diagnosis is still under my profile currently. And so I spoke to my current therapist, and she says the thing with that assessment is you have to be stable, not stable, but
in a good place.
In a good place. And I was not. I was being abused in residence and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. At 15, you're told, hey, you have an intellectual disability. How did that make you feel in your confidence in yourself?
Really crap. For your self-esteem when you're already going through what you're going through is really hard. I've always struggled with my self-esteem, and especially feeling like I'm not smart because I know I've missed out on so much school. I'd always be in school comparing myself to my classmates, knowing that I was at the bottom, not learning anything, not absorbing, not because I didn't want to try. I was trying my absolute best 99% of the time, but because I just wasn't in the right space.
What was school like for you when you were in residence?
I'm not sure how to put that into words. It was not ideal. You would be given things that I knew I wasn't the smartest, but I knew that it was way too easy. And in a summary, it would be 2 + 2. What's that?
Oh, and you're 15.
I was 15.
And so that's your maths.
It was crazy.
It's probably the level of maths I'm comfortable with, but definitely not a good enough maths curriculum.
I just was so appalled at the time. I was like, this is not okay. And being in school in residence, because they have it at one of their hubs, if you had acted up in any way in your time in residence, you wouldn't be able to go to school that day.
So you're actually punished
Yeah.
by withdrawing your education?
Yeah.
Was there any other so we've talked a little bit about maths. What was your English lesson like?
I think my 11-year-old little brother it would be too easy for him.
Okay, so just really easy.
Really basic stuff that you do in primary school, I'd say.
Did you have the option of going to school at your school you were at before you went to residence?
They didn't feel comfortable with you going outside of residence.
Residence, from my personal, what I can figure from it, it just seems like you were kind of locked down a little bit.
Hugely. It felt like, because I went in there when I was 13, it felt like prison. I felt like I was in Korowai. And I had never been to Korowai, but that was just a feeling it had given me. On my first day, I was just so shocked because I'd been moved there because I had nowhere to go. And I was 13 and they told me that I wasn't allowed to keep my bag. I was only allowed 3 changes of clothes. I wasn't allowed to bring my shower products into my bedroom with me. I've just felt so unsafe.
And then you're not given your basic right to education on top of all of the mess of residence.
Exactly.
So when you left residence, what was it like transitioning back into traditional school?
I jumped at it. I was so excited to just, not even just schooling, just to get out of residence, to be normal, because I had overall about a year of my life taken away, being stuck in it was just a cycle.
Do you remember that first day of school?
It was scary. Just being surrounded by normal people.
Yeah.
And not feeling normal yourself after everything, because it took me so long to get into school and to find the right school. But I ended up going to alternative education, which I found was great.
So you found really good for you?
Yeah, it took us a while to find it, but I had to go through Northern House School and I probably wouldn't have done it without them.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you ended up finishing high school?
I got my level 1, 2 and part of my 3 in a year and a half.
In a year and a half?
Yeah.
Bro, it took me 3 years and I still struggled. That's a hustle, Aaliyah.
Yeah, I was.
But intellectual disability, let's not forget. Honestly, and it kind of sounds I don't want to be mean for people who have an intellectual disability because it is a very real thing, but you do not have one.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm not qualified, but she definitely doesn't have one.
My therapist agrees with you, so it's
okay,
fine.
perfect. Because it's just mad to me that you would have that label put on you incorrectly because the test was clearly taken under really bad environment, but then that label on you has had such an impact on you. Just speaking personally, the entire time I've known you, I've recognized how low your self-esteem is around how smart you are. You have made so many comments over the years I've known you, offhand comments where you're oh, I'm dumb or I'm not smart. And I've tried to actively tell you that is not true, that you just have never had access to stable education and actually you're really smart.
Thank you.
What are your future aspirations for your next step in your life?
I want to study law.
Girl, I'm going to call you up to be my lawyer in 10 years.
I want to study family law to understand litigations.
Then I won't call you up.
Litigations and everything under rangatahi, and I want to do advocacy.
That is so cool. I just love that you have been able to turn that around for yourself. Do you know what that was for you? What was the thing that helped you get to this point where you are able to believe in yourself achieving a law degree?
I look at everything I've been through in the 18 years of my life, which is some pretty horrific stuff, but I will fight with everything I've got to help prevent it from happening to anyone else.
And she's a fighter, I will say. That's one thing I know about
Very
you.
stubborn.
Yeah, but that's a good quality because being stubborn means you haven't given up. And there would have been so many times in your life where, it could have broken you, but you kept going and you found it inside of yourself.
It does break you, but then you just pick yourself up and you try again.
Yeah. So growing up, did you think university was something accessible for you?
I was never sure. I had never been told anything. You're not told how it all works. You're not being helped with what happens after school. They just tell you to get through high school and we'll get to it when it happens.
Yeah.
Never happens.
In the placements you were in, so those people who were raising you and being role models for you, did you see them have degrees? Like, was it something that you saw other adults have?
I saw everyone else around me, planning to be in uni. A lot of everyone I went to school with, they're all currently in uni, and I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
You're not told.
Do you think that, like, even now with those golden dreams, like, that it's like university is something how to apply for, or
no?
So it's like you've got these dreams, but practically how to do it, there's a big gap.
Exactly.
What do you think Oranga Tamariki could have done better while you were in care to help you? Like, you still are eligible for transitions, right?
I'm with transitions.
Okay, so what sort of things do you think Oranga Tamariki and or transitions could or should be doing?
Workshops to help prep you with the skills you'd need for things like applying for university, things with loans, all that financial sort of stuff that would come with it.
Just want you to know, Voice is working on this exact thing.
Amazing.
Not for universities, but
yeah.
Yet, I will say. But I do like the idea, like, I don't feel like there is enough education for you when you're leaving care, right? About all of those things that you might want to do.
I feel like it's not even just things like universities. I know so many people that struggle with things like license. Like, they're not taught how to do that. And I know people say transitions are supposed to do it, but half the time they don't.
Thinking forward to when you are at university, do you think you would want your university provider to know that you're care experienced?
I think that's such like a hard question.
It is hard.
Like, you don't want them to treat you different, but extra support could be ideal.
For me, I just think that we maybe need to address the stigma around being in care, hey? Because
honestly, it's huge.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people in academics don't understand care or what it means.
Exactly.
If you could say anything to whoever is Minister for Children, because this may be watched in 10 years, right? And we won't have our current Minister for Children in that seat anymore. So if you could say something to any current or future Minister for Children around young people's access to education while they're in care.
Because right now it's not easy. It's not easy whatsoever. And I think they need to start listening to care experienced people more as to what they want. What do they think that they need? Because everyone's different, right? I can say my opinion, but there are so many people who would like to have theirs heard.
So just like listen to voices. If you can think about your whole education experience, if you had the promise to education met throughout your whole childhood and your whole care experience, like, what do you think your life would be like now? Like, how different do you think it would be?
Crazy different. I would have gotten my level 3. I'd probably be in uni. Probably have like a year left with my degree. I think it would just have been a game changer. It would have been essentially normal.
Well, what do you wish, like, the general public would know or could know about kids in care in regards to them in school? Because I think often we hear about kids, we get labelled as like naughty kids or absconders or kids who are running away and disruptive, all of those kinds of things. Like, what do you wish the public actually knew about what it means to be in care and how that impacts your education?
It's not their fault. They didn't choose that life for them. It's the system and how it's been put in place for them. It doesn't hear them. It doesn't understand them. It doesn't give them homes like they're supposed to.
I see a lot of myself in you. Like, I struggled with school. It wasn't until I had my last foster parents who made me believe I was smart. I was just like you, thinking I was stupid. I didn't get told I had an intellectual disability, but like, I see myself in you, and when I hear you say things like you don't think you're smart, I remember being that girl, and like, I know that you have so much potential, and I'm glad to see that you're finally believing in yourself, even just a little bit, because you're so powerful and so smart, and I can't wait to see what you do the rest of your life. Are you going to cry now?
I'm trying not to cry.
This is too sweet. But yeah, I'm just really proud of you, and I hope that you are proud of yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
When it comes to education, the numbers are grim. Just 14% of care experienced adults have gained a tertiary qualification compared to 49% of the general population who have done the same. Isaac Heron is trying to change that. He was lucky to have a stable placement in care, which helped him to excel in the classroom. He was so successful, he's just earned a prestigious Rhodes Scholarship, enabling him to study in the UK at the University of Oxford. Isaac's also made it his mission to help other care-experienced young people to access the same opportunities he had, and has started an organisation called Tertiary Education for Care Leavers, which aims to help rangatahi access tertiary education.
So I have been in contact with the care system since I was 6 months old, but I moved in and out of care and mostly still stayed with my biological mother, who was raising me as a single mother in Auckland until I was about 6. And then I was permanently in care from there, stayed with a foster family that lived nearby in Auckland who were family friends with her until I was 8. And then that kind of fell through. So then I was placed in one last foster family out in the North Waikato in a place called Miranda, where I've lived ever since then. And I've been basically in a very stable relationship with them since then, but also over time I've managed to kind of rebuild my relationship with my biological mum as well, especially since I left home. So I'm quite close with both her and them.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
All I remember of Miranda is the hot pools.
Yes.
Like Miranda hot pools.
Yes, that's the only thing that's there.
Yeah. Miranda hot pools and your parents' house.
Yeah.
I love that. So what did that mean for your education, like your schooling, and did it mean you enjoyed school, you got help you needed? Like what was the positive?
It is interesting that it was as soon as I moved there when I was 8 that I suddenly started to do quite well at school, whereas before then I'd been just kind of average. And then I like had a remedial reading teacher, for example. Well, I'm not sure if it was actually because I was struggling or they were just worried because of the disruption I was experiencing, whether they wanted to keep me up to date. So I don't really know what was going on there, but it was when I moved that I suddenly started doing better. I don't know if that's just a coincidence or whether it's the fact that I now had like a stable situation and much less stress and could actually focus on school and trying to do well at it and realizing that I actually enjoyed it that caused me to start doing better. It's a bit hard to know.
Because I kind of bring this up every time I see you as if it's like mine to own. But like, do you just want to say for people like, where has your stability in education gotten you to now?
Yeah, so what you're referencing there is that I was awarded a Rhodes Scholarship last year. So I did really well at high school especially, and then from there went to Aotearoa University where I studied law, economics and genetics, and did really well. And from that, alongside a lot of the extracurricular things I've done, like working with voice in a lot of different ways for quite a long time, those two things together I think were why I was eventually given the scholarship, which allows me to study a master's for 2 years at Oxford, which is starting in October this year.
So for people who don't know what a Rhodes Scholar is, it is so prestigious and like so like hard to get, and like how like not many people around the world become a Rhodes Scholar, hey? Yeah,
it's interesting. So there's 100 a year across the whole world, although New Zealand does get 3 of them. So it's a little bit disproportionate in New Zealand, but it's still pretty competitive in New Zealand.
3?
Yeah, it's not that many.
In the whole of New Zealand.
Yeah.
And you're 1 and 100 around the whole world.
Yeah.
That's so cool to see. Like, so for me, it's super inspiring because I look at you as like, you are what is possible for our young people. Like, if we have educational stability, like you are what is possible. So the reason I wanted you to come talk to me on the podcast is because I know about your work giving back to the education sector, especially for those of us who have left care. So for people who've never heard of Tertiary Education for Care Leavers, do you just want to explain like what it is and how it started?
So it was started by me and someone I actually met through my work at Voice called Ingie Johnston. We met while working as part of the Ministerial Advisory Board group, which the Ministerial Advisory Board in turn was created to advise Oranga Tamariki in responding to some of the problems that it was having and trying to get a lot of systemic change made to it. But when we met, we realised that the two of us had so much in common. So she's also done a huge amount in care advocacy, went to Otago as well, also studied law, also did really well and was a Fulbright scholar to go to the US, and now works in climate change and is doing stuff all over
Also
the world.
really smart.
Yeah, she's really cool. It was great to meet her. But she said to me when we met, I've been thinking of trying to start this project to help people access tertiary education in New Zealand because I've been living in the UK, and she had found this website called Propel, which basically is a centralized database of information directly designed to help people who have been in foster care access tertiary education. So it goes through all of the different grants and scholarships available to them, tailored advice for them, because a lot of the universities there will actually ask if your care experienced and offer specific support for you, including specific scholarships, in a way that really doesn't happen in New Zealand at all. I just don't think that there's been that level of visibility in the education space here at all. And she saw a big gap there that she would like to change.
Yeah, and so you guys are hoping to change that.
Yes, yes.
So it's called Tertiary Education for Care Leavers, which I guess is quite obvious.
Yes,
it's trying to help increase awareness, or
it's trying to get to the state that something like what the UK is in. So there are a bunch of universities in the country that all, if they took more account of what care leavers needed, could offer a bunch of specific supports to them in terms of, pastoral care while they're there, actually tracking who's coming to university, who's been in care and what they need, potentially offering specific scholarships or at least specific support for how you could apply for scholarships they're already eligible for. And then on the other end, our care sector, I think, doesn't necessarily do as much as it could to support people to access tertiary education if they've been in care. So in 2019, the Transition Support Service was set up, which has a budget to try and help people once they've left care, in the same way as a parent often helps someone who's their child even after they turn 18 and they move out or whatever. And that transition support service, I think, is filling an important gap. But even then, I think they still focus more on helping people get jobs or helping people get help on benefit and things, rather than saying, tertiary education is something you should aspire to.
Yeah.
And
or even could.
Not something that you have to. There are options for many different people, and it's not for everyone. But
I think often the focus is getting care experience young people to survive.
Yes,
rather
totally.
than thrive.
Yeah.
And it's you know how to rent, you know how to here's how you cook, here's how you rent, here's paying your bills, but not what are your goals and dreams or aspirations and how do you reach them?
Yeah.
For the care sector and the transition service, I think there is a gap.
Yeah. So what we tried to do was just have partnerships with all of these different groups and say, here's all of the specific things we think you could do to support them better. Could you please do it? And we got a bit of traction from the Transition Support Service and Otago University. But we're hoping to, because we've now received some funding, to actually start a charitable organisation which will employ 2 people to work on this full time, actually do a bunch of stuff with all of the tertiary organisations and all of the other different government departments that can help do.
You and Inji have just been doing this in your free time for the kindness of your heart, just so incredible. What is your end goal for tertiary education for care leavers? What kind of work or change do you guys want to have made in the system?
I think I would want something like wraparound support for all of the people who come out of care and want to access tertiary education, or anyone who could access it who otherwise it wouldn't occur to them. So it would be everyone who has some kind of stake or capacity to help this group to actually be doing it in all the ways that they can. So having all of the concrete changes to what tertiary organisations do, having all the concrete changes to what the government does, and then having it all in one place so that care leavers can just find out all of the information that's tailored to them and know that they're a group that people think should aspire to this and that there's support to help them with that. I think, hopefully, if that happens, we wouldn't actually need this separate organisation to continue to exist. It's kind of trying to just change all of the policy and practice approaches of these organisations that I think already should be doing this.
If we have anyone listening who is either care experience, currently in care and not thinking that tertiary education is accessible for them, or they are studying and they're really struggling, what would you say as some advice to them?
Yeah. The biggest group I'd want to think about are the people where they've just never had anyone assume that it would even be possible for them, which was very different to my own experience and not something that I realised was so common for people in foster care. So I think the first bit of advice would be, even if you don't think that you can do it, you probably can, and you should at least consider it and look into what kind of tertiary education that might be, not necessarily university, but like trades and things as well, and look into the kinds of supports that might be available to you. Because to some extent, some of the barriers that we think there are is just people don't realise that the transition support service can actually help them as much as they actually are capable of helping them, or they don't realise that often if you're a care leaver, you can get a student allowance, which makes all your living and costs free, but you have to be able to apply for it in the right way, which is often a very difficult thing to do, which will hopefully be us at some point, but also the transition support service. And I think there are some others as well, but I can't name them off the top of my head.
Well, I know you're if you're a young person with a kai whakamana voice, your voice kai whakamana can help you with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so there's that aspect. I think the other thing is that if you feel like you're already struggling and can't see how you would be able to go to university, or you're struggling while you're there, I think understand that you're not alone with that. I've met so many people who have been in care who just struggle to be able to pay for it, or they've fallen behind in the education experience at high school and so don't have some of the qualifications they need. And there are often ways around those things, and it's very common for people who have been in care to go into tertiary education much later than everyone else for exactly that reason. So when you're 25 instead of 18. And I think that's perfectly legitimate to do, and you still have heaps of time after that to do whatever you really want to. I would like to say that if you get into university and you're there and you're struggling, you've already done so well compared to so many people in care. You've overcome so many barriers that so many other people didn't have to come to, and you should be proud of that regardless. And it often still will be hard because people will in care face challenges that other people don't. All I can say is that I hope that T4CL will be able to make that better over time, being willing to ask for help and look out there and see what's available and who can help you make all the applications or give you all of the information that you need. I think will make a huge difference and is definitely worthwhile.
If anything in this podcast has raised any issues for you and you need to talk, we recommend reaching out to a trusted friend or adult. Or you can call Youthline on 0800 376 633 to get more support. Or if you're in crisis, please call 111. Remember, there is no shame in asking for help. Next week on Whakarongo, we talk to another care experience rangatahi, Kai Hoffman, about the promise to be taken care of. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be a part of a movement that advocates for change, one story at a time.